Hello, my name is Isabel Odambo. I'm a junior studying biomedical engineering at Trine, and I am the vice president of the Multicultural Student Organization.
Good evening, my name is Alexander Salim, and I'm also the vice president of Trine's Multicultural Student Organization, studying computer science and information technology.
And on behalf of the Multicultural Student Organization, I welcome you to Trine University's 30th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month celebration. As we reflect tonight on what would Dr. King think today, I hope that you are inspired to carry out the ideals of peace and unity that Dr. King promoted. At this time, I would like to introduce Trine University student Lance Williamson. Lance is a member of the Christian Campus House and will open our celebration in prayer.
Would you please bow your heads with me in prayer? Heavenly Father, I just want to invite you to be a part of this amazing event that Trine is hosting. I thank you for the opportunity of allowing us to celebrate the life of a godly man, someone who brought about change and reform in this nation, someone who unified people just like in the gospel. I thank you and praise you for the life of Dr. King, the way that he was able to unify not just African Americans and whites, but paving the way of unity for all people in this nation of brothers and sisters. I thank you for this wonderful event. I praise that you will bless it, and that people would draw closer to you from this event as we draw closer to one another. I also just pray that we would be able to unify as a campus, that we would be able to show our love for one another as you have shown your love for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Lance. I would now like to welcome Chinazam Okorafor, president of Trine University's Multicultural Student Organization and president of Trine Student Government. China will read for us The World Under the Lens of Dr. King.
Hi. Today we celebrate our 30th annual Martin Luther King celebration. Today we celebrate the feats of generations. Today we celebrate you, Dr. King. My name is Chinazam Okorafor, and I will be speaking on this world, our world, under the lens of Dr. King Jr. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star, for it isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best version of whatever you are. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving. These profound quotes of Dr. King are a resounding call to remember who we are, to not lose ourselves tomorrow from the identities we have today, to believe we can, to keep moving, and to be the best version of who we are. The world I speak of is the world we all live in. It doesn't only include the shores and boundaries of the United States. It includes all parts and levels of our world, because as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So, who are you? What are you made of? How do you go about your daily life? What is the difference between the 1960s and now? But just stop for a moment. Don't just jump to saying nothing. Rather, just take a moment to ponder who you choose to be going forward. For yes, you also have a role in this. And with the power to weave our lives, we achieve the world we desire by choosing to be a better you. Remember, as Dr. King said, the quality, not the longevity of one's life is important. Thank you.
Thank you, China. At this time, Richard Hickman, Mayor of the City of Angola, will offer a welcome to the city. Richard Hickman has been Mayor of Angola since 2001 and was elected to his 5th full term last year. He has been a resident of Steuben County for almost 50 years and has served on Angola's Park Board and Plan Commission for more than 2 decades. He also has been part of the annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month celebration for more than 20 years, and was presented the Unsung Hero Award during the 2017 celebration for exemplary support of diversity at Trine University and throughout Steuben County. Welcome, Mayor Hickman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the mayor of the city of Angola, it is my honor to represent our city elected officials, employees, and the citizens of our community to welcome you to our city as we join together to celebrate Trine University's 30th celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and legacy and Black History Month. Once again, I want to thank Deb McHenry and the Trine University Multicultural Student Organization for inviting me to be a part of this program this evening. And I also want to thank President Dr. Earl Brooks and the Trine University Board of Trustees for virtually hosting this event. Last year's theme was Unity is Our Greatest Strength. And I don't believe that any of us realized just how prophetic that theme was at that time. Now, of course, we all understood that our nation was somewhat divided. But I don't believe that we truly understood how divided we were until the 2020 movement got into the COVID pandemic, our national elections, and the realization of the social inequities that really came to the forefront as 2020 moved forward. Hopefully, we have learned that whether it be a pandemic, elections, or social inequities, we are in this together. And to rectify all of these problems, we must understand that these aren't just big city problems in America, and these are not just rural America problems. We must face these challenges together, whether we are from the farmlands in rural America, from a small city or town, or from the largest metro areas in our country. We must stand together and say, enough is enough. Now, of course, there are some people out there that want to make us feel that empathy and sympathy, along with love and respect for our fellow man and men and women, are the signs of weakness. And at the same time, these same people feel that bullying, intimidation, and violence are signs of strength and courage. Now, I believe that Dr. King felt it took much more courage to show love and respect to those that needed a hand up and the support of their fellow Americans in receiving their constitutional rights as citizens of this great country. This year's theme is, what would Dr. King think today? Wow. It appears to me that this year's theme will just be as timely as last year's. And I am looking forward to hearing what our keynote speaker, Pastor Donovan Coley's thoughts are on this subject. But it would seem to me that after over 50 years since Dr. King's death, Dr. King would be discouraged to find our country in the position it is in today. But in reading more about Dr. King and reviewing video clips of Dr. King in action, I would have to guess that Dr. King would not show how discouraged he was, but he would just keep attacking divisiveness that we are facing today. Giving up and giving in were not in Dr. King's DNA, and they cannot be in ours. And so I end my portion of this program by once again welcoming all of you virtually and in person to the city of Angola, where no matter who you are, no matter where you are in life's journey, you are welcome here.
Thank you, Mayor Hickman, for your inspiring words and your continued support of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month celebration. Dr. Earl D. Brooks II, 16th president of Trine University, will now offer a welcome to the university. Dr. Brooks has served as Trine's president since 2000, leading the university on a path of growth and development and improvement to ensure it is one of the top private institutions in the Midwest. Under Dr. Brooks' leadership, the university has added more than $155 million worth of campus enhancements and facilities, experienced nearly 2 decades of balanced budgets, enjoyed record enrollment, and had a growing economic impact on this region. Thank you for joining us tonight, Dr. Brooks.
As the president of Trine University, I welcome you to the 30th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month celebration sponsored by our multicultural student organization. In ordinary times, we would proudly host this event inside the beautiful Teeth First Center for Performing Arts. However, we thought it best to protect the health and safety of our campus and community by hosting this year's event virtually. Between Stadium Hall and Hershey Hall on the Trine University campus, there's a marble bench etched with a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of a true education." As we reflect tonight on Dr. King's life and legacy, we focus especially on the character of a man who spoke of transforming enemies into friends, of being concerned with all humanity, and living together as one. As a university and as a nation, we must work together on a foundation of justice and fairness for all, to value all citizens equally, and build on the strengths that exist in every person to bring about a better community and a more humane world. To those of you viewing, thank you for joining us this evening, and we hope you're uplifted and challenged by the program you hear tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Tonight, we are privileged to be joined by Nyoki Chapman, a solo gospel artist and music minister at Union Baptist Church in Fort Wayne. Nyoki has performed as part of the Sister Act Millennia, which toured with Prince for over 5 years. As a solo artist, she released 2 nationally distributed gospel projects, with her first single making the top 10 on the national Billboard gospel charts. After recording in Nashville, she returned to Fort Wayne in 2010, beginning in her current position at Union Baptist. Welcome, Nyoki.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Nyoki, and I'm just really excited to be a part of this program, this Black History program today. I'm going to do 3 songs for you. The first song is very near and dear to my heart, but it's also near and dear to Martin Luther King Jr.'s heart. It was said to be one of his favorite songs. And so I'm going to do that. It is entitled Precious Lord. Probably Mahalia Jackson, most definitely Mahalia Jackson made it very popular. And I'm going to sing that right now for you. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, and let me stand. I am tired. I am weak. I am worn through the storm, through the night. Take me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on when my way grows drear. Precious Lord, please linger near when my almost gone. Hear my cry. Hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead your child on.
My next selection is a song called Waymaker. This is actually a song that is written and performed by a Nigerian songwriter. Her name is Sinach. I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully by the end, if you're not familiar with this song, that you know it well enough to sing along with me wherever you are.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are the waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are the waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, and you're touching every life. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every life. Lord, I worship you. I worship you. And you are my waymaker. Yes, you are promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are the waymaker. Yes, you are promise keeper, light in the darkness. Hey, oh my God, that is who you are.
you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Hey, yes you are. Hey, just for me, God, you're my God. That is who you are. Hey. I've had an amazing time with you all. I hope you all enjoyed the selections. The last and final song is a song by yours truly. It's entitled Joy. In 2020 was a very tough year for me. I lost my mother, and this was her favorite song, so I'm singing it for you, yes, but I'm also singing it for you, Mama White. God bless you guys.
You are the reason I have everything to live for.
Listen, in the morning when I rise, I lift my voice to you. I look to you, Lord, I lift my eyes, I give my day to you. Lord, I thank you for who you are and all you've done for me. And you make me more than happy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I have is a blessing, yeah. And you give me joy, joy, joy unspeakable. Joy, joy, joy down in my soul. Ooh, some people don't understand this new life change in me. See, they remember the former times and the girl I used to be. Oh, but who the sun sets free is also free indeed. And it makes me more than happy. Oh, what I have is everlasting. You give me joy, joy, joy unspeakable. Joy, joy, joy down in my soul. Joy, joy unspeakable. Joy, joy down in my soul. You, Lord, are the reason I have everything to live for. And my heart is open, ready to receive so much more. And it makes me more than happy. Oh, what I have is everlasting. You give me joy, joy, joy unspeakable. You know it, sing along. Joy, joy, joy down in my soul. Listen, I've got it. Hey, hey, unspeakable. I got so much joy. Listen, this joy that I have, this world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, this world can't take it away. Listen, joy unspeakable, full of glory, remarkable. Lord, I thank you for my life, it's so incredible. And I want you to know, Jesus, you're the best thing. Woo! Listen, joy unspeakable, full of glory, remarkable. Lord, I thank you for my life, it's so incredible. And I want you to know.
not sing.
Thank you, Naoki, for sharing your beautiful music with us. Our keynote speaker is Reverend Donovan Coley, head of the rescue mission in Fort Wayne. A native of Kingston, Jamaica, Reverend Coley graduated from Fort Wayne Bible College and earned a master's degree from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Deerfield, Illinois. He attended Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana for postgraduate studies. Pastor D, as he is affectionately called, became CEO of the Rescue Mission and president of the Rescue Mission Foundation in March 2008, after serving on its board for 2 years. Founded in 1903, the Rescue Mission provides restorative care to men, women, and children from Fort Wayne and surrounding counties experiencing homelessness. Thank you for sharing with us tonight, Reverend Coley.
I'm so honored to be here today at Trine University on this historic day, in fact, this historic season, as we celebrate Black History Month. This is Trine University's 30th annual celebration of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month. And the question that we are going to address today, or at least attempt to answer, is what would Dr. King think if he were here today? There's a sense in which Dr. King is here. It was amazing just recently. As we were celebrating MLK Day, I looked at social media and there are so many people putting these incredible quotes. But I was also saddened by the fact that as these quotes were being placed there on social media, I realized that our reality is so far from the dream. But I must commend the leadership, Dr. Brooks and his team, the faculty, the student, the staff, and your mayor and other community leaders along with the residents of this region for taking the time to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Black History Month. This is your 30th year, and I believe it shows first and foremost the courage that you have to remember. It is one thing to address a holiday and just to have it go by. It's another thing to take time out just to ponder and to reflect and to remember. And so courage to remember. There's also this consistency to reflect. Oh, how we need to reflect on the past so that we're not repeating the ills of yesteryear. I must also commend you because not only do you have the courage to remember and the consistency to reflect, but the capacity to learn. I consider myself to be a student of history and a student of the civil rights movement. And I know when we experience a lot of the atrocities in our nation and our world recently, within the last year or so, even prior to that, I was so saddened and so many people thought that I was an expert. But the only thing I bring to the table is my 61 years of experience of knowing that as an African American, being born in another country, and now living in America for 40 years, I know what it is to be Black. And so I come to you as an African American with a capacity to learn. And I trust that you would see this opportunity as one way to learn and to understand from our past, and then to become a significant part of the solution as we move forward into the future. But I love the fact that not only do you have the courage to remember and the consistency to reflect and the capacity to learn, but you also have the character to right the wrongs of the past. If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were here today, I believe this is what he would be thinking. He would say that you are the generation that has the courage, the consistency, the capacity, and the character to save America. I was taken aback some years ago when a book was written, and the generation after World War II, they were described as the greatest generation. I'm convinced that Dr. King would say that you are the generation that have the capacity to save the soul of America. You see, the past could be characterized as a time when America lost her conscience. The past and the ignorance that still exists, unfortunately, continue in many parts of our nation. After 400 years of the most dehumanizing reality in the history of our country. And as we think about losing the conscience and the soul of America, I am of the strong opinion, my sisters and brothers, that there is hope. And as I think about what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would say and what he would think, he believes that there is a generation that is rising up, that is understanding the very heart of what has made America great in the past and how we have lost our ideals and the position. But now this generation is about to recapture a sense of what it is to be a people with a conscience. I reflected some years ago as I watched a movie, and this movie was Alex Haley's Roots. And I would encourage you, if you'd like to get a sense of what happened to the people of America as folks were adjusting to the reality of what it means to be black in America and what it means to be a slave in America, I would encourage you to go to YouTube or whatever media source you'd like and watch the clip when Kunta Kinte was then tied up and he was getting ready to lose his sense of identity. And as the slave owner looked at Kunta Kinte, and after many lashings and many beatings at the hand of another slave that was being forced, the question was asked, "What is your name?" And as Kunta Kinte was just writhing with pain, he said, "My name is Kunta Kinte." And then the other slave was asked to beat him again. And after a few more lashes, the question was asked, "What is your name?" And then he said, "My name is Kunta Kinte." With every ounce of passion and the breath that he could summon, he was there expressing his name, Kunta Kinte. And then the slave was asked to beat him again. And just as he had gotten to that point of making the transition from his sense of identity to understanding that he was now a slave and he should never have the audacity of thinking that he should be a runaway slave, he was lashed again. And when the question was asked, "And what is your name?" As you watch the movie, and as I watched it as a teenager, and I could just sense the anger swelling up within me as I realized that this particular scene didn't just reflect on one man's tragedy and one man's situation, but it was all about the plight, the pain, the position, and even the posture and the posterity of a people. Then as he was lashed, he said, "My name is Toby." My sisters and brothers, it was a time when America was at its worst. But I have good news for you. As I reflect upon the history of America, and then as I reflect upon the contemporary situation, and I reflect upon the fact that so many of who we are as a nation has now been exposed, I believe it is now high time for this generation to rise up. And I believe that Dr. King would say, you are the generation that have the courage. You have the consistency as young people. You have the capacity and you have the character to right the wrongs of the past. As I reflect upon where we are as a nation, I know that it is a time that so many inequities still exist in America. Some years ago, a commission was established was called the Kerner Commission. And as they reflected upon the state of the African American community, what was so interesting was 50 years after the Kerner Commission, some experts, Janel Jones, John Smith, and Valerie Wilson, they put forward an incredible summary of what life was in 1968 and what life was in 2018. And listen to what was said by these experts. The year 1968 was a watershed in American history and Black America's ongoing fight for equality. In April of that year, in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, and riots broke out in cities around the country. Rising against this tragedy, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 outlawing housing discrimination was signed into law. If you remember the 1968 Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their fists in a Black Power salute as they received their medals at the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. Arthur Ashe became the first African American to win the U.S. Open singles title, and Shirley Chisholm became the first African American woman elected to the House of Representatives. As you look at what was transpiring in 1968, I believe Dr. King would say that those were the best of times, and those were also the worst of times. It was a time that led to inequities. It was a time of gross inhumanity. It was a time of great injury, even to the American experiment. As I reflected upon the Declaration of Independence, I have to ask myself the question, where was the soul and the conscience of America? Do these principles, do these truths mean absolutely anything? Because this is what the Declaration of Independence states. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As I reflect upon that, my sisters and brothers, I believe that this great American experiment became deformed. Not only did it become deformed, it was diluted. It was devoid of integrity, and it has diminished in value. And that is what we're dealing with in 2021. The reality of the exposure of the soul and the conscience of the great experiment that is America. It was that reality that thrusted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to center stage in leading the civil rights movement. In the interest of time, it could be said that the core issues revolved around racial inequality based on a system of white supremacy. Now that was the bad news, and that is the reality of America. And part of the reason when I took this assignment to share with you is that I wanted it to be an honest conversation. And I wanted you to understand that as Dr. Martin Luther King, if he were to come back today, he would say that you are the generation that understands the history. You are the generation that understands the hope. You are the generation that understands the fact that we have a common humanity. And you are the generation that can right the wrong. I must share with you, my sisters and brothers, that there are things that we can do, but we must first appreciate the inequities that still exist. Just recently, I had a conversation with a top executive in a firm in the Fort Wayne area. This top executive literally came to me and he said, I just can't find anybody that is qualified to lead in a top executive position in my company. I asked him to give me the profile of the person that they're looking for. And as he gave me the profile, and he gave me the qualification, and he gave me the scope of the role, within 10 seconds, I was able to give him a name. It is my strong opinion that if we're going to move and address the inequities, and because you are the generation that I believe Dr. King believes can right the wrong, you must look at the harsh reality of the segregation and the separation that exist, and then use everything at your disposal to make sure that you can address the inequities. I followed up with my friend a few days later, and it was obvious when he said to me, I just can't believe I was looking in the wrong place. You see, when you function with your sphere of influence and it is devoid of understanding the history of America and the solutions that can come to bear on the situation, then you will lose sight of the answers and lose sight of where you can find the remedy. It was so easy. I followed up with him recently and he said, oh, this person who is now a vice president is now thriving. And he was excited. Sisters and brothers, there are so many things that we can do to right the wrong. And so as we think about what are the things that we can do to make a difference, because I believe Dr. King would believe that you are the generation that has the courage, the capacity, and the character to save America. He would say, much has been accomplished, but we still need to go higher, wider, and deeper. In fact, according to Statistica Research Department in 2020, the unemployment rate of African Americans in the United States stands at 11.4%. This was 1.4 times the national average of 8.1%. And while that particular number was significantly less in the last 2 years, you should know that the unemployment rate in 1968 was 6.7%. So what have we accomplished? Dr. King would say the unemployment rate is actually higher today than it was in 1968. And so much needs to be done. We need to go higher, we need to go wider, and we need to go deeper. As the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners and influencers of those who are in positions of power and leadership, I believe you have the privilege, maybe even the responsibility, to address the inequities that still exist in that economic disparity. He would say that we're seeing a downward trend in the number of African Americans in federal and state correctional facilities, according to the Pew Research. And so these are the best of times and the worst of times. And so there is a downward trend, but we can do better, since we need serious criminal justice and prison reform. We have deep and persistent inequities in arrests, convictions, and sentencing, not to mention police reform, not necessarily the defunding of the police, because God knows we need them. But there must be significant reform. And I believe it is your privilege and responsibility to become a part and to become a catalyst in bringing about those systemic changes in those areas. Dr. King would also commend the many young people and others who are leading the fight in the Black Lives Matter movement. But he would challenge the so-called expansionists and the globalist agenda when the plight of the American Negro is still far from being addressed. I remember in the 90s, as we were dealing with the pro-life issue, and I was involved with a particular church, and the question was, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And so the Lord privileged my wife and I to have a son. And so we had one child. And just when we felt that we had gotten to a place of taking care of that child, and he was now in elementary school, we decided to adopt. And so for us, it was important to take care of one child first. I believe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would say to us, he appreciates all the agendas that has been thrust upon the civil rights movement, but he would challenge the methods. He would challenge the strategies. And he would say, up until this day, the American Negro and the issues facing Black America has not been addressed to the level that we could say that we have arrived. And so as he said in his I Have a Dream speech, that check has not been cashed. There is still insufficient funds. And so he would challenge the radical and extremist strategies both on the left and also on the right. I find it so interesting that I have not been forced or encouraged to join any particular movement. But I believe that as an individual, I have the privilege of understanding the history of the past and then creating a wonderful community around me, and then start to address and to unravel the issues of the past in practical ways as opposed to carrying out somebody's agenda. May I say to you, students of Trine University, do not allow yourselves to be captivated by the minds of people on the left or people on the right, but make up your own mind and bring about systemic changes. I believe he would also say that he believes in the new resolve of the American youth. And this generation has seen in the student body at Trine University, he sees that you can chart a new course of change, an embrace of courage and hope, so that we can truly become one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But how do we do this at the practical level? May I encourage you as we wrap this up, that you should build relationships that will last a lifetime. Not relationships of convenience, whether you are black or white, Asian or Latino. It is so important for you to build relationships that will last a lifetime, not relationships of convenience. How do we do that? Dr. King, he would say there are 4 ways that we can do that. And this is what I want to leave with you. I want to say to you that you must be intentional. Be intentional. Step outside of your comfort zone. It is critical for you to understand that there are people outside of your sphere of influence. So step out of your comfort zone. Secondly, be inquisitive. Get permission to ask questions and develop shared vulnerability. I've had some wonderful questions from my white brothers and sisters. And at the same time, I allow myself to become vulnerable and I ask them questions as well. And as we have a shared relationship, it's amazing how we have had shared experiences. So be inquisitive. Thirdly, Dr. King would say, be inviting. Invite each other into each other's circle. In other words, be so inviting that you can move into other circles, and if it comes down to it, defend the integrity of each other. And finally, be image bearers of God's love to all of humanity. Invest your life for the good of humanity. So what would Dr. King think, and what would he say? He would say, Trine University, that you are the generation that has been empowered with knowledge. You are the generation that understands the history of our past. You are the generation that witnessed George Floyd's murder on national television. You are the generation that have lived this out during a pandemic. You are the generation that has the courage. You have the intelligence. You have the emotional intelligence to discern what's happening around you. But you are the generation that can save the soul of America. May you take up that task. And as Dr. King was a young man, may you become a young person of change, not only in your family, but in your friendships, in your community, and in your nation. May God bless you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. The Multicultural Student Organization at Trine University is proud to celebrate 30 years of honoring Black History Month and the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Though tonight's format is different than in the past, I hope that you still have been able to truly celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with us and have been inspired to carry on his legacy through all that has been shared with you. I want to thank everyone who has been a part of this evening's program. Thank you to MSO members Isabel Odamba and Alexander Salim for serving as MCs. Thank you to Chinazam Okafor for her reading and Lance Williamson for offering prayer. Thank you to Dr. Brooks and Mayor Hickman for your warm welcomes. Thank you to Naoki Chapman for your beautiful music and Reverend Coley for the inspiring message you shared with us this evening. Thank you also to all who helped plan this event and to Colin Meadowcroft and the Trine Broadcasting Network for making this video stream possible. More than 57 years ago, on August 28, 1963, Dr. King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to deliver one of the most iconic speeches of all time to more than 250,000 civil rights supporters marching into Washington, D.C. Among the many hopes he expressed was his dream that one day his nation would rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Many events since we celebrated Dr. King 1 year ago bear witness to the fact that this dream has not yet been realized. As we close our program tonight, I challenge you to make the fight for equality and unity more than an annual event. Let's do everything we can to make Dr. King's dream a reality. Thank you and God bless.